Hello, thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. I'm Reverend MeeLing, been known by a few names. Reverend MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Lady MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle. Depends on when and where I knew you. So, or I guess technically if you saw me online, that's another aspect. So, I knew this guy, and I've discussed this guy and this situation many times. I just, probably because of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, the after effects of I forgot a few portions. Surprise? No. Not making light of the situation, just a reality. I can laugh at myself. So, I had known this guy named Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr. As I said, I've discussed this situation a few times. So, there was a point in time, though, that I was introduced to his little brother and his little sister. His little brother, meaning Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., his little brother is named Jeremy Kuykendall. And their little sister is named Rachel Kuykendall. And you spell Kuykendall really weirdly. It's not at all how you think it would be spelled. It's K as in kilo, U as in uniform, Y as in Yankee, K as in kilo, E as in echo, N as in November, D as in delta, A as in alpha, L as in Lima, L as in Lima, for those of you who would need to know that. So one day, as I'm already repeatedly informed about this 151 Road Warrior thing during Fiesta in San Antonio, and the Mad Max movie at the Alamo Draft House. Again, hearing about it. And I'm not impressed. Like, at any point in time that Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., had attempted to impress me with that, it was like, you're not impressing me. You sound like a terrorist. It's just how you sound. Every excuse you and your ex-girlfriend, Lazy Eye, also known as Jamie Robles, tell me, it just sounds like an excuse for a whiny little temper tantrum that and then I was told, well, you better be careful. I'm going to tell your ex-husband. Oh, fantastic. So I got to deal with that. Anyway, so there's a point where I get introduced to Jeremy Kuykendall. And Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., said, this is going to be so awesome, on our way to go meet him. Why is this going to be awesome? I really don't understand. And he says, because you're a Republican, right? Yeah, I'm a Republican. What's the point? What? You got a problem with the fact that I'm a Republican? And he's just, no, I just can't wait to introduce you to my little brother. Why? Because most people, when they're excited to introduce someone to their family, it's like, hey, and this is, no. Because whenever Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., said something like that, it was one of those, what's the backstory? What do I need to know? Sort of thing. And Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., said, oh, because my brother's a Democrat. Whoop-de-doo. I don't care. I mean, it wasn't in any offense. It was just one of those, okay, there are plenty of Democrats. I did grow up in New Jersey. I've known a few Democrats. I have. I also grew up walking around in New York City in the 5 boroughs. I've met a few Democrats. Same thing when I went to Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania. I've met a few Democrats. I have. I've met a few Republicans too, but in those particular areas, I've met a couple Democrats. What's the big deal? They're still human beings. Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., said, no, 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 you just don't understand. He's a college student Democrat. Whoop-de-doo. I don't understand what the big deal is at all whatsoever. And Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., he goes, no, 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 it's going to be great because he's going to just be by you. Why do you think that? And he looked at me, meaning Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., and he said, well, look at you. And he goes, look at your hair. Well, it's a little short, but okay. Because this is the only way I can look at my hair without going to a mirror. Okay, well, you know. Okay, I got red hair. All right. What does that mean? He goes, well, you know, have you ever met a Republican? I'm in the state of Texas. Probably have met a couple Republicans. I mean, I know myself, so there is that. I probably have met a Republican somewhere in the state of Texas. Mind you, this was in 2006. So I possibly, hypothetically, could have met a Republican in San Antonio, Texas. Maybe, I don't know. I could have also met a Democrat before meeting Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr.'s brother. But it is what it is. It's just one of those, I don't care. Whatever. What's the big deal? And so Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., is like, no, no, no. He is a college student Democrat. Do you not get how awesome and funny this is going to be? I look at him and I'm like, depends on what you think is awesome and depends on what you think is funny. Seeing how I know what you find is awesome and what you find is funny. I don't know if this is really going to wind up being that situation. And realistically, the fact that you have the backing of my, at that time, ex-husband, now dead ex-husband, you don't have that saving grace for your brother. So I don't think that's a smart idea if you think that this is going to be awesome. Cactus Jack looks at me and is like, oh, just you. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's just me. That's all. Uh-huh. So I'll meet your brother. All right. All right, well, you know. Hey, well, let's go meet your little brother. Yay, he's a mini you. Fantastic. Great. It's gonna suck. That's what's in my thoughts. It's gonna suck. Horribly bad. And I was very pleasantly surprised because I could actually speak with his brother about various things. But I'll get to that. So, Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., says, and this is my brother, Jeremy. Hello. That's what I do. Hello. And Jeremy Kuykendall comes over and he's like, well, hello. Hello. What you stepping at me like that for? Was my response. And Jeremy Kuykendall, he's just like, well, aren't you just... Aren't I just what? Like, I don't know how to respond to this situation. Because as far as I'm under the impression, like, your brother has said this is going to be awesome, and what he considers is awesome, I don't really agree with, so I'll just leave it at that. What? And Jeremy, he's like, well, hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm like, well, nice to meet you. How you doing? And he's just, oh, you've got a strong handshake, you know, for a girl. Excuse me? What was that? What'd you say? And he goes, well, for a girl, you have, what? What? What'd you say? For a girl, I'm a female. Yeah, I know it's technically a girl and all that, but I'm a female, alright? Don't call me handshake for a girl. Mm-hmm. Alright. Let's see how this situation goes. It's just one of those. And so in my thoughts, I'm just, this mom, oh no, he did not just call me a girl. Oh no, he did. Just gonna start out with a handshake for a girl. I'll give you in my thoughts. Just whole bunch of New Jersey military. Just just and so instead, just don't call me a girl. I'm a female. Not girly. I mean, I can be, but keep that on the DL, all right? Because yeah, I mean, I'm a female, so what? And so Jeremy looks at me and he's just like, well, you're different. Well, you're observant, was my response. I was just like, those who know people who grew up in New Jersey in certain areas, like, yeah. Good morning, Captain Obvious. Hello, I'm a little different. What will give you that idea? I mean, come on. Just in the state of Texas is me, so whatever. And so, Jeremy Kuykendall, he looks me up and down and he's like, well, you are, prettier than anybody my brother's dated. Would you call me? And it's not to be rude about that. It was just one of those, why you gotta say that? Huh? Can you tell I don't know how to take a compliment? I realize now that was technically a compliment. But after being called, in a handshake, so, that's mixed signals to someone like me. Just saying. I'm not the sharpest tool in the crayon box, okay? And so, this boy, he's just like, so, what did Jeffrey tell you about me? Like, all proud and whatever, and egotistical. And I look at him, I said, so he said you're a college Democrat. And Jeremy's like, yes. Yes, I am. I'm a Democrat. Was my response. And he looked at me and he's like, so, what democratic policies do you and I agree on? Probably none. Probably. At that time, I was smoking real cigarettes. So let me clarify that. And so Jeremy looks at me and goes, what do you mean you're not a Democrat? Look at you. Look at your hair. It is red. I have a shade of red for my hair color. Alright, what? Last I checked, Republicans are the red party, but whatever, go ahead. Tell me more, go ahead. And so Jeremy Kuykendall looks at me and goes, well, what else did he tell you about me? He told me that you were a part of that Road Warrior 151 garbage. Jeremy Kuykendall goes, yeah, we were kind of arrested for that. Yeah, but you're still walking around. And Jeremy Kuykendall looks at me and goes, well, why aren't you impressed? So I medically retired from the Army after a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 when I was in basic training after I had fought to be emancipated from my biological parents. And so I was in the Army, and in basic training is where my head injury happened. There are 5 military bases in the city of San Antonio, and as I told your brother, Cactus Jack, Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., I am not impressed by that. I think that you sound like a terrorist, and for you to be proud of that and to be like, not impressed at all. And then you said I have a handshake like a girl. just say. So, Jeremy Kuykendall, over various meetings that I got to meet him, is just, oh, Susan, it's that head injury that made you Republican. No. Oh, no, boy. Let me explain something to you. Don't you go and blame that on my head injury. Do not make that mistake. And the first time he said that, he went, I was just joking. It was just a thought. Yeah, there's truth to every thought. And let me tell you something, boy. I grew up where I grew up. I know democratic policies. I fought to be emancipated so that way I could join the United States of America's Armed Forces Army Bridge. So don't you go and tell me that you think that just because I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, that made me a Republican. No, boy. No. I've been a Republican since technically before I actually joined. I've been a Republican since the first time I could vote. I wouldn't have fought to be into the military, to be emancipated, to be able to do what I needed to do if I wasn't a Republican or didn't believe in Republican ideals. And Jeremy Kuykendall looked at me and was like, well, your head injury probably don't you go there. Don't you go and don't you do that. Don't you bring that up that way. No, little boy. Apparently my neighbors in 736 are doing something. That is what it is. Anyway, so it was one of those, I don't care what you think, but do not make that mistake. Because if you're going to go and say that you think that it's because of my head injury that I'm a Republican, no. I know what democratic policies do to large cities. I know what democratic policies do in a long-term effect. Are there good aspects too? Certain ones, yes. But the Democratic Party, how many labels do you have to put on somebody and then try to say that you're so inclusive? You don't need to have labels to be inclusive. It's very simple. And Jeremy Kuykendall was just, well, can't we have a discussion where you don't get angry? Oh, boy. You ain't seen nothing yet. Do not make the mistake of thinking that just because I'm talking to you, that I'm angry. Do not make that mistake. And he goes, yeah, well, you're all animated. Have you ever met anybody from the East Coast? And he goes, well, yeah, you. Uh-huh. Anybody else? And he goes, no. Well, let me explain something to you. Most East Coasters, we talk with our hands. We talk with our faces. We talk with our bodies. We talk, obviously, with our mouths. However, we, as East Coasters, have a certain thing. It's just, it's in the air out there. And it's in the water that you drink. It's just how it is. I mean, I was grown in utero. And I, ate, as I did in utero. And then when I, was delivered. I breathed the air in New Jersey and New York when I went there in the 1980s and 1990s. I drank water and had food that had water from New Jersey and New York. So, it's just a thing. And he was like, yeah, but you don't have to be so aggressive. Isn't that sexist of you to tell me as a female, and you being a male, that you think that I'm being too aggressive? Isn't that sexist? And wait, what? No, I'm just using your democratic logic against you. That's all. Because you want to claim that you're a Democrat and that you're for all these different things, then how are you going to come at me as a male to a female and run your mouth about something you don't know? And his response was, well, I read a book. A book only teaches you so much. There are important aspects of books, but experience is also quite important. It is. And so what you could read in a book, it's only going to do you so much without the experience in conjunction. And since you've read books, but you have absolutely no experience, I have the experience. I know from personal experience. From where I grew up. Yeah, but you had that head injury, boy. You know what your brother, Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., had said as far as my now dead ex-husband in 2020, but at that time ex-husband, as far as that aspect, Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr.'s little brother, Jeremy Kuykendall, said, yeah, that does not extend to you. So you can bitch. But see what will happen, and it did happen that way. You can bitch to your brother, Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., and he can go and complain to, in 2020, my now dead ex-husband, and I'm going to be asked about it, and since it doesn't have to do directly with Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., you, Jeremy Kuykendall, do not matter. And I actually will not get in trouble for what you have a problem with. And then, here's the kicker. Your brother is actually going to get my, now in 2020, dead ex-husband to hate you. That's how that's going to go. And so, inevitably, yes, Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., went to my now dead ex-husband, then ex-husband, to tell on me for what I said to Jeremy Kuykendall, because we had hurt his little brother's feelings, and instead of him being a big brother and doing it himself, he had to run to my now dead ex-husband, then ex-husband. And so, Robert, my now dead ex-husband, when he was alive and just my ex-husband, looks at me and goes, is that what happened? I say, yeah, his brother ran his mouth. And he looks over at Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., and he says, why are you bothering me with this? If this is actually a problem, then you should have handled it, not me. Why are you coming to me? And, if it had to do with you, that's one thing, but having to do with your brother, I don't care about your brother. And I was like, that's right. Well, as time went on, and this is before my now dead ex-husband, then just ex-husband, had actually gone overseas. This was still in 2006. And so, before my now dead ex-husband actually left for training to go through the Texas National Guard, he hated Cactus Jack, also known as Jeremy Kuykendall Jr.'s little brother, Jeremy Kuykendall. Absolutely hated him. could not stand the sound of his voice. Or I should say sound of his name in Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr.'s voice. Could not handle it. Would just... I would deal with the repercussions of that, though. Why is he telling? I don't know. Why are you even involved? Why do I even have to be dating this piece of trash? Because, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'd rather pick who I want to date. And my now dead ex-husband, then ex-husband, and I had a conversation, and I was reminded why I didn't have a choice to date at that time. And so I'll just leave it at that. So then there were a few other, you know, discussions as far as in regards to Jeremy Kuykendall. And I got introduced to his fiance, Leslie. I don't remember what her last name was. I think she was from Plano, though, or somewhere in the Dallas area of Texas. Nonetheless, dark brown brunette hair to like here, rounder oval face, and kind of palish complexion, brown eyes and stuff like that. And she did that. Oh, so you are involved. Okay. Well, then randomly, Jeremy Kuykendall would come over and he'd be like, so Susan, did you think about... And then his fiance would start getting aggravated. It's like, do not put me in between the two of you. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Let me nib this garbage in the bud right here. Like, no, no, no. You, Leslie, meaning Jeremy Kuykendall's fiance, don't you try comparing yourself to me, because there's nothing to compare at all. And then she got offended because I said that. And I was like, okay, here, let's go over what can we compare about one of another, okay? And Leslie was like, yeah, you know. I said, okay, you are going to college, correct? She said, yeah. I did not. I dropped out of college so I could continue my fight to be emancipated to join the United States of America's Armed Forces. So we can't compare that, correct? She goes, nope, I'm in college. Okay, so you're slightly taller than me. And she was like, yes, I am. I can look down on you. Yeah. I will let you think that. Because what do you mean by that? I will let you think that. I will let you think that just because you are taller than me, that is the only way that you can look down on me. I will let you think that the only way in that regard is you. But I will tell you right now, I am 5'4", does not mean I can't look down on you. And she was like, why, whatever do you mean by that? Well, I'm from New Jersey. And I grew up the way I did. And so it will not take me long if I have to, where I would be looking down at you. However you interpret that is something you should take into consideration of how someone who is 5'4", and she was like 5'8" or something, and it's one of those, you just take into consideration how that would occur where I would be able to look down at you. You should really think about that. And she was like, well, like, what does that mean? Have you ever met anybody from New Jersey? like I mean, and she was like, yeah, I've met a few people. And how are they when certain things occur? And her response was, well, I saw one of them get into a fight. Oh, and it was like, yeah, just saying, just gonna throw that out there. I can very much make it where I permanently look down on you. if you would like that. However, I don't recommend it. So this little garbage of you comparing yourself to me, there's no comparison, and I am not interested in your fiance. And she was like, but he looks just like his brother. I looked at her and I was like, exactly. Ta-da! Math. He looks exactly like him. Not just physically, but energetically. Because people can have different physical appearances, but have a different energy about them. Your fiance, Jeremy Kuykendall, does not have a different energy than Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr. Leslie's response was, are you hitting on my man? No. Why would you think that? Like, what part of what I just said? Did I say the wrong? Did the words come out of my face in a way that were just unintelligible? Like, what is it that I said that would give you the impression, Leslie, that I would ever, like, what would give you that idea? And she looked at me and she goes, because he looks like his older brother. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Ta-da, math. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not hitting on him at all. Don't worry. I am. I'm so worried that you're going to take Jeremy. Are you being sarcastic? That was I genuinely didn't know because and Leslie was just, I know how he looks at you. How does he look at me? And Leslie's response was, well, he looks at you with, those eyes. Yeah, that's kind of how you look at someone. That's kind of how you look at someone. You look at someone with eyes. That's how that happens. Because looking is associated with your eyeballs. So yeah, that's how you see. Mm-hmm. That does not make sense to me. At all. And she was like, well, I've seen how he looks at you. Okay. Well, have you seen how I look at him? And she was like, no, but I've seen you talk with him. Oh, you're one of those. Okay. That's all I needed to know. You're one of those females. Okay. All right, good to know. And she was like, what do you mean I'm one of those females? You're one of those females, and there are males who are like this as well, but you're one of those females, you get all catty and over, if another person is speaking with your guy and you instantly hit that jealous mode button in your brain and you just fly off the handle, and I don't deal well with that. I got an allergic reaction to dumb bitches. So you'll have to excuse me. And then she was offended that I called her a dumb bitch. Oh well. And so we didn't necessarily get along, needless to say. She tolerated me being around. That's essentially what that was. And then she was, as far as like in their little brother's or in their little sister's ear, Rachel Kuykendall. I was just like, I don't have, I don't got patience for that. No. 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 Just Mm-mm. No. Um, you, meaning Rachel Kuykendall, you may be younger than me, but you are older than 18, and you're taller than me, but that can be rearranged. That's not a problem. Not a problem at all. That's not a problem. I can handle that. I can very much make you the other way around. It's fine. No problem. I prefer not to. Just don't. Just don't. I just... mm-mm. And it's not that let me clarify, it's not that I go out looking for fights, obviously. That was not and so that sort of situation was just, why is this occurring? Like, at all. Just why? Why? Oh, okay, because I'm breathing. My bad. How dare I breathe? That's what happens. Like, that's the only thing I could think of at that time. And it was just, I was being sarcastic. I knew that there was other stuff going on. But Jeremy Kuykendall and I got to a point where we could actually discuss things. And he stopped doing that. I was a part of this and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, good for you. I don't care. I still think you sound like a terrorist. That's how that goes. And so there was a point where I had discussed with Jeremy in a bigger way. It wasn't as like sort of stuff. And Leslie was not around. And we were talking genuinely because he was like, why did you fight? You said you fought to be emancipated. I said, yeah. And he goes, well, why? I said, well, because I grew up in New Jersey. And he goes, what's the big deal about that? The big deal is that I grew up in one of the 3 counties that had the largest commuters as far as amount of people that travel to New York City every day. And he goes, well, what does that have to do with 9/11? You were in before that happened. Yeah. I grew up in the 80s and 90s there. Do you know what happened in the 1990s up there? And he goes, no. I said, in 1993, there was an attack on the World Trade Center. And there was an explosion in the basement. And it really messed with the structure of the World Trade Center building. Not just the one that it was in, but because of the amount of explosives, it messed with the different areas around. Like all of the buildings within a several block vicinity, there were actual issues with the structural damage that was done just from that explosion. There was a lot of fertilizer. There were beams that had broken and had gone down into the basement from that 93 attack. There were pipes that slammed down into the basement. And it's a multi-level parking garage. So where the van was in the World Trade Center in the parking garage area, like all of those parking structures that were within the vicinity, they instantly weakened because of that explosion. And the rush to get everything taken care of in a quicker way, so that way people could get back to work, because it is New York City. They did everything that they could as quickly as they could, but what was done, that whole aspect, you don't understand. There were a lot of people who were directly affected that I grew up with. And I'm not just talking about kids that I went to school with. I'm not just talking about people that were in my neighborhood. I'm talking about at my church that I wound up going to multiple days out of the week. And so there was not a person that I grew up with that I knew that didn't have a direct connection. And so even my babysitter's husband, he never gets sick. Every now and then he would get sick. If he got sick, it was something to be concerned about. And so he got sick, Jose or Joe, my babysitter's husband, and he actually had to go to the doctor that day. And he thankfully went to the doctor that day. And I had told Jose or Joe, I had said, when I had seen him later on in that particular month or year, I had asked what else, because I had told him about my nightmare when I was still seeing my babysitter and the family, despite what age I was. I saw them all the way up until moving from New Jersey to Illinois. So even though I was above the age of babysitting, we'd still stop by there because they essentially assisted in my raising. And so, Jose or Joe, he worked on the 70-somethingth floor. And when I had seen him that year, after that had happened, he had, Susanna, come here. What'd I do? what I do now? And I was feeling better by the time I saw him. You come here right now. All right. And so we talked. And he was like, you had a nightmare. And I said, yeah, but I've been working on it. He goes, what was that nightmare again? And I was like, I don't really want to talk about it. Because him and his wife actually moved to the United States of America from the Dominican Republic. They legally immigrated to the United States of America. And so it was one of those, I don't really want to talk about that. And he was like, no, Susanna, you need to tell me right now what it was that you had in that nightmare, because we're from the old world country, and we didn't take you seriously. We're going to take you seriously now. What was your nightmare? And by that time, I had felt much better because I had mono Epstein-Barr bronchitis, Lyme's disease, and the flu all at the same time. And instead of being hospitalized and taken care of immediately, I had to fight that off myself. And so I did. Anyway, so I had told him about the nightmare, and I said, but the part of my nightmare, there's a part missing. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, because my nightmare, there were airplanes. And Jose or Joe, he looked at me and goes, what do you mean there were airplanes? There were airplanes. There were airplanes. There was one that flew in one this way and one that flew in the other this way. And he looked at me and goes, like what? And I said, like this. So like you're looking at it. You got one building here, one building here, and one goes in this way and one goes in this way. And he looked at me and goes, there were no airplanes. And I said, yeah, there were no airplanes. And now I've got to go over a few things in my thoughts. Because in my nightmare, it happened all at once. And it didn't happen all at once. So, I'm really, really nervous because it didn't happen all at once. And in my nightmare, it happened all at once. So I don't know if that means that it was being planned as far as like what that had occurred. Like there were those who, the enemies against the United States of America were planning at that time. And that's what I didn't see in my nightmare at that time. That later turned into a dream. But I had told Jose or Joe, I said, if you ever get that feeling where you feel sick to go into work again, adhere to it. And not like in the baby sort of way, but in the way that you had on that day. And so I explained that to Jeremy Kuykendall, and he looked at me and he was like, Susan, that's serious. I said, yeah. And I fought to be emancipated, to join. My biological parents did not believe me when I said I had to be in the military for the United States of America. They did not understand that I knew that I had to be in the military. I had to have that direct connection to be able to do anything. And no, whatever, it's just a phase. You'll grow out of it. You'll stop wearing camouflage pants, or, you know, it's just a fashion trend. No, not in New Jersey. No. Well, you know, and then when I fought to try to get into MAST, I had to actually fight to be able to take that aptitude test, by the way. I had to fight for that. That wasn't something that it was like, hey, I want to go do this. I'm not my biological sister. My biological sister would be able to be like, hey, I want to go do this. And my biological parents would have been, okay, no problem. No. Just like I had to fight to be emancipated, to join the United States of America's Armed Forces, I had to fight to be able to take an aptitude test, to be able to go and attempt to get into Marine and Science Technology School with the Naval Academy attached. I had to fight for that and annoy my biological parents every single day that I could to just get the aptitude. And if I could, you know, from there, if I could get in, great. If I couldn't get in, all right. But at least I made the attempts, and I was still going to figure out how I was going to wind up getting into the military because I knew I had to. And I was explaining this to Jeremy Kuykendall. He was just, are you serious? And so I asked him, I said, you and your brother and sister are really into movies, right? And Jeremy Kuykendall looks at me and goes, yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of the Mad Max forte. Yeah, that whole thing that you sound like terrorists. Yeah, that whole thing. Yeah. So you watch movies. And he was like, yeah. And he had already known, the way I had already explained, that I wasn't allowed to watch movies of a certain rating until I was that age, because of the way I was raised. So I could see any G-rated movie I wanted as a child and a teenager. But when it came to watching a PG-13 movie, I didn't have that happen until I was 13 years old. And my biological parents made chose which one was approved. Whereas, most people don't have that experience, especially on the East Coast. There are some, just not to the level that I grew up with in New Jersey in the 1980s and 90s especially. And so, in that regard, I had explained that, and I said, so I really like documentaries more so than I do movies. I'll take my son and my daughter to movies. I'll watch movies with them, but I suffer for it. And he was like, what do you mean? Well, headaches and migraines. And he was just, oh, they're really that bad. Yeah, they're really that bad. I deal with headaches and migraines. Try having a headache or a migraine and dealing with a bright light in your face when you're watching a movie or a television show. It's painful. So if I force myself to watch something, it's usually something that I need to pay attention to, and it's based in fact. There are some that have like satirical, aspects of, but there are points that I know I need to pay attention to, and I deal with it. I deal with it and I handle it. But it does take a bit for me to be able to go forward with that, but usually there's something that I have to pay attention to. So watching, even being on the computer is painful. And at that time I wasn't on it nearly as often as I had to be later on. Nonetheless, I still had to do what I had to do. And so, and that's later in time in that regard, from when speaking with Jeremy Kuykendall. So he had asked, well, what documentaries do you watch? And I said, well, the last documentary I watched, I actually had to take a break from. And he goes, what do you mean you had to take a break from it because of your headaches? No. I had to take a break because it was that much for me to see and hear. And he looked at me, he's like, well, what was it called? 9/11. He goes, what about it? I said, no, that's the name of the documentary. It, ironically, part of my personal issue with that is, obviously I wasn't there. There's no denying that. My personal issue is there are certain aspects of that movie, that documentary, that were in my nightmare. And so I had to stop it. At least in regards to the film photographers, the two French guys. It was awesome that they turned the camera away and they didn't show the bodies actually falling, but you couldn't help but hear that sound. I didn't have that luxury in my nightmare. I didn't have that luxury where what I was seeing could be put on pause or turn the TV or whatever. I didn't have that. And I was a child when I had that nightmare. And so I had to pause the 9/11 documentary because it was a lot of information. Yes, there was following the fire trucks and everything. It's the only interior camera footage outside of the security footage, but the security stuff wasn't allowed to be let out, whereas the two film photographers being there, they wound up having literally the only footage inside of the Twin Towers the day of 9/11. And that was part of my nightmare. And so I had to pause that. I can't. I'm literally seeing what I had a nightmare about, and then I got beaten for because my biological parents thought that I was just being a stupid child. And it wasn't that I was being a stupid child. I literally had that as my nightmares. And not just the sounds, but the smells, the screams that were muffled in the video. There wasn't that for my nightmare. I didn't get that luxury. My nightmare was, in my nightmare, I saw everything. And then I tried explaining a building to my biological parents that was not the World Trade Center, and they didn't want to believe me on that. And what happened there was so much more different, which apparently turned out to be the Pentagon. And then, in reference to the 93 flight and that whole thing, that wasn't pleasant either. But at least my nightmare had changed after the first time of really realizing that it could actually occur, and me starting to think about ways to prevent that from going as far as it initially had. Because once I started thinking about ways to no longer, that was the smallest I could have it go to. Because in my initial nightmare, it was not just, and I'm not minimizing this when I say this, so please don't be offended. It was not where it was just the World Trade Center when the first time I had the nightmare. When I had the nightmare the first time, the entire planet was burning. The entire, every major city on a United States of America map and world map, every single major country and continent, everything was on fire. All of the smoke plumes were on every single area of the map. That had bigger cities of populations. And after dealing with the conversation from my biological parents of them saying that they thought that I was just being a stupid child and I wanted to stay up past my bedtime, mind you, I had to be up in time for Sailor Moon. That wasn't the thing. It was just, there wasn't a major city. There were buildings that I had never seen before. Part of what freaked me out about being in Washington State, I had never seen some of those buildings and seeing them in the distance. It was one of those, gotta breathe, gotta breathe, gotta breathe, when driving because of my nightmare. The initial aspects of. And it started changing over time as far as what I was trying to figure out what I could do so that way it would. And I was just a child. I didn't think that I was going to save the world. It was just one of those, I got to be able to do something though. I got to be able to be involved somehow so that way it's not that. And what is the only way that you can go anywhere and everywhere? You got the military. The only way. Whatever branch will accept me. And so I told Jeremy Kuykendall about that. I said, you know what, I'll actually let you borrow my video. And he looked at me and goes, video? You mean DVD? No, video. I have a VHS of it. What? A VHS? You know what a VHS? No. Well, you're going to have to get a VHS player to be able to see it. I don't know if it's out on DVD. I'm sure it is now in 2020, but at that time, I knew how to work a VHS. And so he watched it, and he wound up telling me that he made it through, you know, like a little bit here and a little bit there. And I was like, yeah, it's heavier than you thought it was, huh? And he was like, yeah. When you said you dreamt about this and this was a part of a really big thing, I didn't realize like how, I said, see how respectful the two French filmmakers were? Did you get to that point yet? And he goes, no, I've only gotten to the point where at that point of the discussion, he had only gotten to where right as the first airplane had gone in, they hadn't gone into the buildings yet. And I said, yeah, it's when they get into the buildings. That's when it gets heavy. And then it continues on. That's when it gets, that's when you're going to have severe, like, you got to watch it. And It took me, I think it was 3 or 5 days to be able to watch that movie, that documentary. Because, and I dealt with the conversations because it was like, I don't care. I can't. And I didn't explain it at the time to my now dead ex-husband why I just could not watch it in full. And so Jeremy Kuykendall, he had wound up joining ROTC to go into the army like his older brother. And Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., was like, ha ha ha, did it on. And I looked at him, I said, you know, there are Democrats in the army, right? Like, seriously, stop being so childish and immature. And at that time, my now dead ex-husband, then it was just ex-husband, he was overseas. And it's just one of those, you don't know. You have no idea, and I'm still glad you didn't succeed. And just one of those, I mean, you know, I am how I am. And so, and I know that there are individuals who can very much understand why someone like Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., would not be the ideal individual to be an officer at all, whatsoever. And so, what really aggravated Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., was that his brother, his little brother, Jeremy, had said he had joined because of after watching the documentary. And it was one of those, it's really heavy. It's a little itty-bitty VHS, but it'll hit you like a ton of bricks. Now, at that time, I also warned him that he needed to make sure that if he was going to join, to tell the Army everything that he had been a part of, especially when it came to the 151 Road Warrior thing, because if the Army ever found out and he didn't tell them, that would be bad. Very, very bad. And Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., told his little brother, it was expunged from your record. Don't worry about it. No, no, no. See, if you tell no, 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 no. No, no, no. It's not like the military branches haven't had people who have histories in regards to jail and prison sentences. They have. And they allowed them to join. There were waivers that were involved. But you gotta let them know that. And whatever it was is whatever it was. However, one of the things in reference to Leslie, Jeremy Kuykendall's fiance at the time, she had, oh, but Jeremy looks just like his older brother. And it's like, yep. Yep, he does. Yeah, it's not. I mean, he's better looking than his older brother, ish. But you know, no, I'm not interested in that. So then there's that whole aspect of Leslie, and then there was a female issue with a guy that I was engaged to twice. If I'm not mistaken, her name was Leslie. And she was from Plano, Texas. Irony of ironies. I don't know if they ever did get married. I know that Rachel Kuykendall wound up marrying a Marine. And that was only after she got pregnant and all that sort of stuff. nonetheless, that is what it is. But that is a brief aspect, as best as I can, in reference to that. However, Leslie was the one who had pointed out, meaning Jeremy Kuykendall's fiance at the time. They met at UTSA in San Antonio. I think that Jeremy is 2 years younger than Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kuykendall Jr., 2 or 3 years. And so, whatchamacallit, they had both gone to General Lee High School or something like that, or whatever it is, inside the loop of 410. And so, whatchamacallit, when Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., whether or not Jeremy Kuykendall, not Jeremy Kuykendall Jr., my bad, Jeremy Kuykendall, I don't know if he wound up actually finishing ROTC training and going into the United States of America's Armed Forces Army branch. However, this is a statement, I guess, in that regard of that. So, comment, like, share, and subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Anyway, so you guys have a good one.